Python is a general purpose programming language that is now actively popular among data science and data analytics professionals. So companies all over the world use Python to harvest insight from their data sets and competitive, gain a competitive advantage against their competitors or other companies in the same industry. So welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Excel Island, where the goal and objective is to learn and master Python over the next 100 days. Today is day 13. We are actually still on the course called Intermediate Python, Intermediate Python in Data Analysis. So we're on the course, a career track actually called Data Analyst in Python. We're on the second course of 9 courses, which is the Intermediate Python. And on this Intermediate Python, we're on the chapter called Loops in Python. So from the introduction to Python, we've covered all about data type variables, list in Python, packages in Python. We've learned how to use the NumPy package in Python. That was all in introduction to Python. Then on the intermediate section of the Python course, we looked at matplotlib for data visualization, which is harvesting insight from your data set. They will move to dictionaries and pandas. They will move to I can't remember the third. I'm trying to remember the third chapter, but I know we've done matplotlib, we've done dictionaries and pandas, we've done list also. I think we did list in introduction. Then we are now on loops rather. So we are now on loops. So on the intermediate chapter rather, we did matplotlib, dictionaries and pandas, logic flow and control in Python. Then on the fourth chapter now, which is the part of intermediate Python course, we are now on loops in Python, which is a way to repeat your Python code multiple times if you want Python to work automatically for you, just like VBA in Excel. VBA is for automation, loops is also for automation in Python. So we are starting with basic automation in Python, repeating a code several times using loops. So that's what we want to learn about on today's course, on today's chapter on day 13. So after this loop in Python, we will now do our first case study, which is the ACA statistic case study. So we've covered quite a lot. So we want to use all what we've learned from day one introduction to Python, which is day one that we started this live stream learning journey of Python, or till whenever we do case study, which is the field knowledge we've had. We want to start using it in a case study, in a Python or project. You get it now. So that is the whole idea of the case study. So welcome back to the channel. So also all the CSV files, data sets that we'll be using is already linked under the YouTube description. So do make sure to download those files and practice along with me. So without further ado, let's jump back to learning and welcome to day 13. The whole idea is just to spend 2-3 minutes introducing you to all what we've covered so far. So if I just go over to the career tag section real quick, let me show you what it looks like. If I go under data analysis with Python, you can see we are just 18% out of 100%. So when I started this one way of learning, it all started with data analysis in SQL. Then we also did data analysis in Power BI. So we've covered quite a lot of lesson in the data analytics space. So you can catch all previous live stream on the live stream tab on the channel to also upskill yourself. I'm still working on projects for the data analysis in SQL, some basic projects. So I'll also be sharing those project idea with you also on the channel. So if I just click on data analysis with Python real quick, so you have to see what we have to cover. So on the data analysis with Python, we have 9 courses estimated for 36 hours of learning. And we've actually done 13 hours of learning, because on this live stream, the goal is to spend an hour. We are definitely going to spend more hours practicing. So we are probably going to be spending times 2 of these 36 hours of learning to cover the whole career track. It has 2 skills assessments or 5 projects, which is very, very important. Then we have over 67,000 participants so far. You get it now? Okay, so if I move, you can see the introduction part of the course. We've covered all of this, so you can catch all of this from day 1 to day 4 or day 5 of learning. Then we are now on intermediate Python, which we've covered the math plus lib section. We've covered dictionaries. We've covered control flow and filtering, which are logic. They are now moving to loops in Python. We'll just continue from here. Then finally, we are going to move to the case study here. Case study. Then after this, I think we have another case study, which is investigating on Netflix movies. I look forward to that. I hope I'll see you on this case study section also. Interesting. So let's continue from here. I'll just launch my Jupyter notebook real quick here. So I have Anaconda installed. So from there, we can access different Python environments. So I showed you how to install this on day one. So you want to watch the video on day one, where I recommended a video that will teach you, that will give a walkthrough of how to install this Jupyter Anaconda Navigator to have access to Jupyter Notebook. So while that is coming up, so I just minimize this. So I'll come back to launching my Jupyter Notebook later. So let's continue with this start chapter. So there are several techniques you can use to repeatedly execute Python code. So while loops are like repeated if statements, the for loop iterates over all kinds of data structures. Learn all about them in this chapter. So let's learn all about while loops. Which are while loops. Okay, well, now we're going to learn about for loop. So while loop is like repeated if statements. So we've covered if statements from this chapter here. So you definitely want to understand what if statements are in Python before jumping to loops in Python. So let's start the chapter. So it is what we learned just one day ago, which is 24 hours ago. We learned all about selecting data frame columns using indexes and the column area. We also learned about Boolean indexing, using Boolean series for filtering, simplifying with one-liner code. So we've covered all of this on day 12. So you want to catch up on all this from day 12. So welcome to day 13.
In the previous chapter, you discovered the if, elif, else construct, a way to alter the flow of your scripts. As soon as Python encounters an if statement, it checks the condition. When this condition is true, the corresponding code is executed. If the condition evaluates to false, and if there are elif and else statements, Python continues the search. Anyways, Python goes through this piece of code only once. After that, Python heads over to the next command in the script. The while loop is somewhat similar to an if statement. It executes the code inside if the condition is true. However, as opposed to the if statement, the while loop will continue to execute this code over and over again as long as the condition is true. The syntax of a while loop is very similar to the if statement, as you can see here. The while loop is not that common, but in some cases it can be very useful. As an example, suppose you're numerically calculating a model based on your data.
So just a few seconds there. Okay, I'm back.
This typically involves taking the same steps over and over again until your error between your model and your data is below some threshold. When you can reformulate the problem as repeating an action until a particular condition is met, a while loop is often the way to go. Say that we start with an error of 50 and that our fancy algorithm divides the error by 4 on each run. We want to keep going until the error is no longer above 1. Now, heading over to the script, we start by adding the error we start with, 50. Next, we write a while loop. In the condition part, we write error greater than 1, so that the while loop executes again as long as the error is above 1. Inside the code, we divide the error by 4 and update the error variable. This kind of simulates our fancy algorithm that divides the error by 4 on every run. Next, we also print this error. Let's go through what actually happens if you run this script step by step. On the first run, the error is 50, so the while condition is true and the corresponding code is executed. The error is divided by 4 and printed out, 12.5. Now, Python heads back to the condition of the while loop with error equal to 12.5. Again, the condition is true and the code is executed. The error is divided by 4 and printed out. Now the error is 3.125 and Python heads back to the while condition. 3.125 is still greater than 1, so the corresponding code is executed again. Now the error is only 0.78 and so on, as you can see from the printout. Once more, Python heads over to the while condition, but this time the condition is false. The code in the while loop is not executed anymore, and Python moves on. Notice that inside this while loop, this update of error is crucial. The error had to go down to become lower than 1 at some point. Suppose that we comment out these updates of the error value and run the script again. The error isn't updated, so the condition is always true, and the while loop will go on forever. On DataCamp, this will cause your session to be disconnected. If you're making this mistake on your own system, you will have to interrupt the Python program by pressing the Control and C keys. Head over to the exercises to write some while loops yourself, and be careful. Your while loop should stop at some point. If it doesn't, how will you get back to the next video? Just kidding. See you soon.
So we have to make sure our while loop stop at some point. Yes. The Python code keeps running. So now we are using a while loop. We have to use a number that is lesser or below the variable. Okay, before we continue, let me just launch my Anaconda Navigator, my Jupyter Notebook, rather. So you have access to the bricks, cars, and Gapminder data sets following the link under the YouTube description. So you can, so should I create a new file? So we've done matplotlib, we've done dictionaries and pandas. We're not looking at logic, control flow, and filtering. I'll probably just create a new notebook and call it loops. I'm going to select that. I'm going to rename it loops in Python. Okay, we've renamed it. Oh, just a second there. Okay, I'm back. It's actually raining heavily right now. Like right now, it's raining. So Let me just copy. So this is the new file I want to use for the loop section, but I just like to copy some beginning part of the code here from the previous section. So we'll probably be going back and forth to remember some coding parts in this section here. Let me just paste that there and run it. So we're going to be using some of these packages we've covered. We've learned all about NumPy, pandas, and matplotlib or functions and packages. So we definitely use them along the way. So let's consider. So warming up. Why warming up? So the while loop is like a repeated if statement. The code is executed over and over again as long as the condition is true. Have another look at this. Have another look at its recipe. So the recipe is while condition, then the expression to be executed. Can you tell how many printouts the following while loop would do? X is equal to 1. So it says while x is less than 4, print x equal to x plus 1. Okay, now let's see it in action. So we just copy this bunch of code and run it in our navigator here, Jupyter Lab here. It says the variable x is equal to 1. So while x is less than 4, print x. So this x is less than 4, so we're going to print x. So now we now update x again. So the loop is going to continue. X is equal to x plus 1, which is this x here, which is still less than 4. So it should run 3 times. You can see. So the first one was x is equal to 1, while x is less than 4. Print x is print x1. So the while is going to go back, which is 1 here. So x plus 1 again, that is 2, which is still less than 4. X is less than 4. It's going to print the 2. Then 2 plus 1 again is going to print 3. So 1, 2, 3. So we are correct here. Interesting. You can see the code gets repeated. So it's 3 times here. Correct answer. 3 runs, x will be equal to 4, causing x less than 4 to evaluate to false. This means that the while loop is executed 3 times, giving 3 printouts. Okay, now let's see. That's simple while loop. Pretty straightforward there. Okay, now let's see some advanced while loop. Okay, basic while loop. So below, you can find the example from the video where the error variable initially equals to 50 is divided by 4 and printed out on every run. So I have to make sure I don't do this mistake, or else my computer just keeps running. The while loop just keeps running over and over again. You have to be very careful there. So error is equal to 50, while error is greater than 1, divide error by 4, print error. So if you should run this code, so this example will come in handy because it is time to build a while loop yourself. We are going to code a while loop that implements a very basic control system for an inverted pendulum. So you can learn all about the inverted pendulum here. Or can I just copy the link? Let me copy this link and save it somewhere. So it's something we may probably just go over again. I can paste it here and make it a markdown. And so I could even give it some description here. Oh, you can see once I click on it, it's going to show me all about the inverted pendulum. So we probably not read this right now because it's going to take a little bit of time. Let's leave that apart. See, I'm trying to comment on it. Shift enter. Oops, I can't comment on inverted pendulum. I'll take note of that, or I could just come back here and add the cell below and say inverted pendulum. Make it a markdown so I can just go to the link. Okay, so we are back here now. So let's continue the lesson. So it says Note that if your while loop takes too long to run, you may have made a mistake. In particular, remember to indent the content of the loop using force space or auto indentation. So the instruction says create the variable offset with an initial value of 8. So let's try this while loop in Jupyter notebook here. We have to be careful though. Okay, if I paste it here. So error is equal to 50. While error is greater than 1, the condition is to create a variable called error and divide the error by 4. Let's run it. Because it's going to run it 3 times. So pretty straightforward there. Nothing too serious. That is looping. Now it says create a variable offset with an initial value of 8. So offset equals to a variable offset equals to 8. So code a while loop that keeps running as long as offset is not equal to 0. Inside the while loop, print out the sentence correcting. Okay, hold up. It says create a while loop. So while offsets, it says code a while loop that keeps running as long as offset is not equal to 0. Inside the while loop, print out the sentence correcting. Next, increase the value of offset by 1. You can do this with offset equals to offset minus 1. Okay, so it says keep running as offset is not equal. So we need to use the what do I want to say? So we need to use the condition that offset is not equal to 0 and equals to, I think use a space bar. This means not equal to 0. I'm trying to remember that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Can use automatic indentation. So offset is not equal to 0. So print out the sentence correct. So we want to print out print correcting. Okay. Okay. Next, decrease the value of offset by 1. You can do this with this offset equals to offset minus 1. Now we need to decrease the value of offset by 1. So I can now say offset equals to offset minus 1 to make sure the code stops running. Finally, still within your loop, print out offset so you can see how it changes. Okay. Now we need to print offset within the loop so you can see how it changes. Let's run the code. Ooh, we ran into an error. Okay. My error is from this line 5. So I didn't get offset not equal to 0. I think it's supposed to be not equals to like this. Let's run it again. Oh, I'm missing I don't know why I keep missing this symbol here. What is the error? I'm missing a step though. I'm missing this semicolon sign here in my while loop. Let's explain this error first. Oh, yeah. Initially, I was correct like this. So not equal to 0. Now let's see. Okay. Now, can you see now? You can see, okay. So I'm going to copy this bunch of code and run it on Jupyter Notebook. So we're expecting it to, so it said offset is equal to 8. So while offset is not equal to 0, create correcting. So if the offset is not equal to 0, it's going to from 8 to 7 and so on. So let's run the code and see. You can see correcting. It's going to print correcting and print offset. So when it was correcting, when the first initial variable say offset is equal to 0, then here we have while offset is not equal to 0. Sorry, offset is equal to 8. While the offset is not equal to 0, print correcting is going to print the offset. So the offset is 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So once it gets here, offset is -1, which is 7 here. Can you see? Offset -1. So 7 minus 1, it goes back 7 minus 1 again, 6 minus 1. So when it now get to 0, it's going to stop. It's going to print the offset. Oh, that's like we're kind of repeating the code multiple times. Interesting. Okay. Now let's submit the answer and see. Well done. So follow the instruction pretty well. So that's a straightforward while loop. So we are having a hold of it, or probably a hang of it rather. So this is why. So we have one more condition, add conditionals. So let's add conditionals. So the while loop that corrects the offset is a good start. But what if offset is negative? You can try to run the following code where offset is initialized to -6. So initialize offsets, code the while loop. While offset is not equal to 0, create correcting. Offset is equal to offset -1. So -1 minus 6, you're definitely going to get -5, -4. So it's going to run this code multiple times. So let's run this code first and see what it is going to bring. So it's going to run from -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, all the way down, which is going to, you can see, I have to be very careful running this code because it is going to continue running over and over again. It says here, you can try to run the following code where offset is initialized to -6, but your section will be disconnected. Okay, the while loop will never stop running because offset will be further decreased on every run. Offset is not equal to 0 will never become false, and while loop continues forever. So you have to be very, very careful here. Fix things by putting an if-else statement inside the while loop. If your code is still taking too long to run, you probably made a mistake. So I have to be very careful. If I should run this code, my system here may hang. Okay, now let's use this part of code to fix it so that we won't run into uh, an error. So inside the while loop, complete the if else statement. If offset is greater than 0, so it says if offset is greater than 0, okay. So they've set offset variable to -6 for the while loop. While offset is not equal to 0, print correcting. It now says if offset is greater than 0, okay. If offset is now greater than 0, we want it to print what? Okay, if offset, complete the if else statements. If offset is greater than 0, you should decrease offset by 1. Decrease offset by 1. Hold up. Hold up. So I need to be careful here. So the printout should be what? If offset is greater than 0, the expression should be what? Offset, okay, it should be offset should be equal to offset, see what? -1. Okay, else should now be offset, increase offset by 1. Offset should now be offset plus 1. Okay, let's run the code. So this one say if offset is greater than 0, it should decrease offset by 1. The condition is decrease offset by 1. So offset -1, else offset should be increased by 1. Okay, let's run the code. Aha. Now the code now makes sense. Now you can see. So if your code is still taking too long to run or your session is expiring, you probably made a mistake. Check your code and make sure that the statement offset is not equal to 0 will eventually evaluate to false. So one has to be very, very careful here. Now let's run this code. Okay, let's submit the code and see. We know this. Good work. The while loop is not that often used in data science. So let's head over to for loop. But let's practice this one more time in Jupyter Notebook. So we said initialize offset. Offset is equal to -6. Code the while loop. While offset is not equal to 0, wait correcting. We now said if offset is greater than 0, if you should print correcting here, so the loop goes back. But if offset is greater than 0, that means negative -6, offset minus, you want to decrease offset -1. So -1 -6 is going to be -5. So -5 gets around, okay, now let's run the code. Do you see now? So the first line of code here, offset is greater than 0. It's going to decrease offset by -1. So -5 goes back, -4 goes back, -3 goes back, -2 goes back, to -1 goes back. Immediately offset is greater than 0 here. You're going to add offset plus 1. So offset plus 1 is not equal to 0. So it's going to return 0 here. I hope that clears it a little bit. It's kind of tricky. We have to be quite familiar with basic mathematics. Now let's continue. Now let's talk about for loop a little bit. Let's get into for loop. Probably we just cover for loop and we look at data structures. Then we stop here and continue loop data structure on day 14. I think this is where we now have to apply all we learned about while loop and for loop. So let's focus on for loop.
You've seen the while loop, and now it's time for another loop, the for loop. Have a look at the for loop's recipe here. This can be read as, for each var, a variable, in seek, a sequence, execute the expression. Make sense? Let's see how this actually works with an example. Remember about the fam list containing the heights of your family? Here it is again, in the family.py script. Suppose that instead of a single printout of the entire list, like this, we want to print out each element in the list separately. You could do this by doing 4 print calls with the correct subsetting operations. Instead of this repetitive and tedious approach, you can use a for loop. Let's wipe the print calls and start a for loop. For height in fam, followed by a colon, this means that I want to execute some code for each height in the fam list. Height is an arbitrary name here. I could just as well call it H or something else. Inside the for loop, on every iteration, I print out the value of height. When you run this script, Python encounters the for loop and evaluates the seek element, fam in this case. It sees that it's a list containing 4 elements. Then the actual iteration starts. In the first run, Python stores the first element, so the float, 1.73, in the variable height. Next, the expression print height is executed, printing out 1.73. In the second iteration, Python stores the second value of fam in height, being 1.68 now, and prints out height again. This process continues until all heights in fam have been iterated over, and we end up with 4 separate printouts. Great! In this solution, you don't have access to the index of the elements you're iterating over. Say that together with printing out the height, you also want to display the index in the list so that the printouts are converted to this. How should the for loop be built in this case? To achieve this, you can use enumerate. Let's update the for loop definition like this. Now, enumerate fam produces 2 values on each iteration, the index of the value and the value itself. Instead of a single variable height, you now write index, height. Now, on each iteration, index will contain the index and height will contain the float. This means that we can now also update the statement inside the for loop with a more complicated print call. Notice that I had to convert the floats to strings with str so that you can add everything together. The printouts are exactly what we wanted. Nice. The for loop doesn't only work with lists. You can also create a for loop that iterates over every character in a string, family, for example, and stores it in C, one after the other. Inside the loop, the string C is capitalized and printed out. This time, 6 different printouts occur. That's enough on the for loop for now. In the next videos, I'll explain how you can use the for loop to iterate over other data structures that you learnt about by now, such as dictionaries and pandas data frames. But for now, let's get you coding and building some for loops of your very own.
So let's see how for loops work without using it in a data in any data frame rather. So loop over a list. So have another look at the for loop that Ogo showed in the video. So farm, for height in farm, print height is going to print out. So let's give it a shot here. It is, let's call this for loop. Let's make it a markdown. If I run the code over here, let's call this while loop. While loops or while loop rather. Let's make it a markdown. So this is possible so that when I want to go back to this my Jupyter file notebook, I can easily understand what each line of code is doing. Okay, now let's run this code. You can see, so just print out the farm list easily like that, one at a time. So it says, I have another look. So as usual, you simply have to indent the code with for space to tell Python which code should be executed in the for loop. The areas variable containing the area of different rooms in your house is already defined. So we have a variable here in a list. So write a for loop that iterates over all elements of the areas list and prints out every element separately. So you can say for areas, okay, areas of different rooms. Should we say for rooms in areas? For rooms in, let's say, for rooms in areas, prints print rooms. We just say print rooms. Let me run this code. So we just say for areas in areas. Well, let's run the code in Jupyter Notebook first. So I always forget my indentation here. Why do I always forget that? Because it just prints it out. Just as simple as that. So for loop is pretty straightforward there. Let's run the code now. You can see it just print rooms. Great, that wasn't too hard, was it? No, it was pretty straightforward. Indexes and values. So I want to take it a little bit advanced. So using for loop, let's see, we're on indexes and values part 1. It says using a for loop to iterate over a list only gives you access to every list elements in each run, one after the other. If you also want to access the index information, so where the list elements you are iterating over is located, you can use enumerates, or there's another one to use. So as an example, have a look at how the for loop from the video was converted. Now let's run this for loop again. Just run it in Jupyter Notebook, okay? We're using another stuff called enumerates. And see, so family heights. So for index height in enumerates, print person plus the string of index plus this. I don't know why I keep forgetting the name of this icon. Is this semicolon or what? Space. There's a space here also for this little spaces here. Then plus string of heights. We just print that. Okay. Now let's recreate this scenario in this Python environment here. So add the for loop in the sample code to use enumerates. The for loop is going to be a change for loop to use enumerate and update sprints. Okay, we should change it for loop. So it's going to be for index in area. Just say for index in area, comma, for index, then I need to get rid of this in areas in enumerates, open brackets, areas. So definitely want to point back to the variable here called areas. So we need to print, okay, adapt the for loop in the sample code to use enumerate and use two iterator variables. And use two iterator variables. What does that mean? Well, let's see. So update the print statement so that on each run, a line of the form, room xy should be printed, while x is the index of the list element and y is the actual list element, i.e. the area. So make sure to print out the exact string with the corresponding spacing. Okay, let's convert this to prints index, print index with some spaces here. Okay, space plus. So we want to convert the index to a string also. Convert that index to a string. It's going to print this keyword index, but the index here is going to convert it to a string. Index converted to a string plus on this string here, there's some spaces. Finally, there should be a space here plus the string of our area. Of which area? Areas. I think we need to wrap it in one more. Nope, the area is in the bracket. The index is in the bracket. Then this should do the trick, but let's copy this first and run it on. Let's run it here first. Oh, we nailed it. So we want to recreate this same scenario also on the code. You can see so you said this place it was printing person. For this scenario, we are printing the index keyword. We converted the index to a string. Then we also printed the areas from this list here. Seems for loops is interesting. Ooh, did you correctly define the variable areas expected? 11, 18, 20, 10, 9.5, but got 9.5. This is correct though. The areas was defined for me here. That's quite funny. I have nothing to do with this line of code. I'm still getting error for that. Okay, now let's just copy this bunch of code. I'll just copy it and paste it here for it to work. So that's the trick with this. Now let's submit the answer now. Oh, we are still getting the same results. Why? What's the problem? Did you correctly define the variables areas? Expected 11.25, 80.0, 20.0, 10.75, 9.5. Is it because there's no zero here? This is quite funny though. I still get to get 9.5 though. Oh, what's wrong with the DataCamp interface right now? Then now let's get a print room. Okay, we're to use the keyword room. Probably because I didn't use the keyword room here. Let's use the keyword room. So I think I used room earlier also in this line of code here. I just use rooms here. I just decided to use room. Probably because I use room. But the room is not even the issue. It is this same line of code here that is the issue according to the data camp. But that's nonsense. Let me just go back real quick. I'll probably just troubleshoot it better. See, that one is beyond my control. Now let's run the code again. I'll just refresh the page and decide to run the code again. I'll submit this time. Wow, man. Are you kidding me? Oh, this is not funny now. This thing is absolutely correct. Okay, I'll just copy all this code here. I'm going to delete all of this. Copy the code one more time and paste it here. Now let's see. Imagine. And I'm pretty sure it is the same thing I wrote. Yeah, can see 11.5, 3.0, 20, 10, 9.5. So the same thing as earlier before. Print index plus string index plus spacebar plus string area. This was area. Okay, it was area we used there. So it was area. What did I use there though? I also use areas there. But I have to make sure I'm using area here. Let me run this code. See, it's printed it multiple times though. It's still referring to these areas here. That was even the error. That was not part of the error though. Do you see? Okay, that's by the way though. But we understood the question. That's the most important thing. The error isn't coming from our side. So let's do index and values one more time. And we come to the end of the live stream from today. Okay. Hello, sweets. 309. Let's solve this challenge, the last part of the index, which is the last challenge of for loop in Python. It says for non-programmer folks, room 0 11.25 is strange. Wouldn't it be better if the count started at 1? Okay, adapt the print function in the for loop so that the first printout becomes room 1 11.25. The second one is room 2. Okay, we just add room 1 to this place. It's going to be room 1. We say adapt the print function in the for loop so print out. Okay, I hope I'm still live streaming. Okay, I believe so. 1. So how do we change it so that each printout will change to room 1, room 2? We definitely want to use something different. But let's see. Let's run the code first. Because it's going to return room 1 every time. Instead of it running room 1 for each printout, we want it to switch to room 1, room 2. So 1 is going to switch to 2, 3. So we need to do something here. Okay, what can we do? I want to change the count. So how can we change the counts? Let me see. For index area, enumerate areas. Iterate over all elements in the house. Okay. Hmm. I'm looking at how we can do this. Let's get help. Okay, we need to change the string. Okay. We need to change the index here to 1. Okay. Even naturally, you can see index 0, 1. Okay, let me run this code one more time. We say string index plus 1. Index plus 1. Let's see. Because it said, so the room 1 is going to change from room 1, 2, 3. Okay. So let's run it one more time here. So we need to change it from the index part. You can see instead of index, let me change it to room. So room 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It updates itself rather. Self without even using it. Okay, let me now run the second line of code here. See more the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So by default, the index of the room updates by itself. So string index plus a string here. But in this case, we have to specify that the index should increase from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Much better like this. Okay, interesting. So we've come to the end of loops, while loops, and for loops. Okay, we have one more challenge. Loop over list of lists. Loop over lists of lists. Let's look at this challenge. Remember the house variable from the intro to Python course. So have a look at its definition in the scripts. It is basically a list of lists. Okay, we understood that. Where each sublist contains the name and area of a room in your house. It is up to you to build a for loop from scratch this time. Okay, so I want to build a for loop from scratch this time. So write a for loop that goes through each sublist of the house and prints out the x and y square meter, where x is the name of the room and y is the area of the room. Okay, now let's give this a shot. Okay, so for we're going to use enumerate by default. For index, okay, for index, I'm going to say heights. I'm going to say heights. Okay, let's say area. Areas in enumerates from brackets house. Okay, let's see in action. So I want to print. I'll just copy this print syntax here just to save time. But we have two conditions here. So let's convert it to index first. Index, I'm going to change this area to house first. House. Okay, it says write a for loop that goes through each sublist of house and prints out the is x is y square meter. Okay, where x is the name of the room and y is the area of the room. It says print out the x is y square meter. Okay, let's change this. Control C. Try to print out this. X, the x is, let's run it first and see. Oh, I see the x is y square meter 1. That was a pretty long list. Hold up. Hallway 11.5 kitchen. Is it printing it out living room? It's printing it out in each line of code. That's kind of not what we need. Let's submit the answer first and see. It did not output the correct thing. Well, now let's see how we can. Let me just copy this line of code and do the same thing here. Let's see the result we're going to have here. Do hallway kitchen. Oh, we're having same results here. The x is y square meter 1. Repeat hallway 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. Living room, bedroom, bathroom. So we didn't get the correct structure for it. Okay, let's get there first. Let's see. Okay, so you didn't build the correct loop for it. I'm not even supposed to use enumerate. So if I was using enumerate, it will be taking longer. So I was not supposed to use enumerate. I was to use for each room in house. The x, say where x is the name of the room. Okay, room 0 plus is string room 1 plus square meter. Let me see. I need to understand that line of code first. This is for room from a room in house. For room in house, let's see. And it says print the x plus. So the x is room. The room here, room from here. Room. Now the index of that room. Okay. We're going to the index of the room, which is room 0 here. Index of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Index 0 plus is space plus string of room 1. String room 1. Okay, I'm actually converting the room to string, but why am I indexing room 1? Plus SQM. Let me copy this line of code first and use it. Okay, let's run the code here. Always, okay, I need to understand that index part. Say down that index. Let's run this code. Say the always is 11.25. So the index of always room, index of 0, which is the index here, plus string room 1. This index of 1 is supposed to be for. So I'm confused in this part of the code. It says index 1. Index 1 should be referring to this other, the index of kitchen here. Okay, let's submit this and see. First, that was correct, but I don't understand this other part here. Print the room with index 0 plus is 11.25 square meter. Hold up. I need to understand that part. We're not going back here. I need to understand this index. It's probably because of the way the list the house variable is structured. But we know that this is a 2D list. So this is a sub list inside a list. Let's run the code. This is like a sub list inside a list. So room index of 0. For each room, for variable in sequence. So for each variable, which is the room in sequence house expression. Oh, now I understand it. Because the index is going to print, if you have to print it one by one, index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's into 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But plus string room 1. What if I change this string to 0? Let me change it to 0 and see first. You can see the hallway is always square meter. Okay, the hallway is referring to string of hallway. Yeah? 0 is referring to, so it's referring to this string. Oh, nice. Oh, I understand it better now. So this is the column part. This is column indexing. So index of 0 for this column, index of 1 for this column. Oh, I figured it out. So for subset like this index, all the whole, we are using column indexing here. Column indexing is this column hallway kitchen all the way from hallway to bedroom is index of 0. The next index is the next column, which is column 1 here. This column index, this column has index of 0. The next column has index of 1. The next column is going to have index of 2. We're actually using column indexing. I figure it out. Interesting. So if the code should now go, since it is for loop, it iterates over and over again and move to room instead of 0, it's moved to the next line of code, the next line of code, the next line of code. Oof. Python ain't easy, but we ain't giving up. So I figured it out there. So it was pretty using the column indexing of the technique. So column indexing is pretty important from the way we started learning all about Python. Okay, so let me just save my Jupyter notebook. And so we'll now be learning how to implement and use the while loop knowledge and for loop knowledge in data structure rather than just a list or sublist or Python dictionary or whatever. Okay, so that'll be the end of the live stream for today. So if you found value in this learning journey with me, do well to support the channel by giving the video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, put on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know whenever I go live or drop a new content on the channel. As usual, I'll see you tomorrow, day 14. Do well to download the CSV file so you can practice along with me on as we learn all the way from your end over there. So luckily, so most of the things that we are still doing, we're actually using a bunch of simple list line of code to practice and see the result. So you may not need to download or use any data set right now. But if you need access to the data set, just follow the link under the YouTube description. You have access to those data sets, so you can also practice and sharpen your Python skills. Also, as usual, I will see you on day 14. Do have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye bye. Support the channel by hitting that subscribe button and share the video. Also, share the video so others can learn also.